The first thing that I want to talk about is what is meant by the term consumer credit. And consumer credit refers to borrowing money to finance purchases of, including but not limited to, things like cars, furniture, appliances, jewelry, electronics, etc. Actually, real estate mortgages are also considered consumer credit, but they kind of get lumped into different categories sometimes because they're typically so much larger and over longer prepayment periods. But they are technically considered consumer credit as well. You mean like for what it was talking about at the end with the real estate stuff? It could be on a shorter note, yeah. You could pay it off more quickly, and some people do on home loans and bigger purchase items like that too. But I guess the norm or the standard is that they're typically longer notes, and so
that's why that's why so much debt.
There's lots of reasons it is, yes. All right, can I go to the next slide? Is everybody pretty close? All right, I want to talk a little bit, and I'm going just a little bit further, maybe in depth with my example than your book does in one example here. But the first thing that we're going to actually talk about, there's two different kinds of loans that we're going to talk about. One is called an installment loan, and another is called a revolving loan. So an installment loan is a closed-end credit. This involves borrowing a set amount of money up front and paying a series of typically equal installments or payments until the loan is paid off. So the image you probably have in mind is a car loan. That is the stereotypical way that car loans are done. Okay, so this isn't an always thing, it's not a forever thing, but it's a typical way car loans are done. You go, you borrow the $5,000 for the car or whatever, and they tell you up front, we're going to have this interest rate, and you're going to pay it back over 3 years, and you're going to pay this much every month, or whatever. They set forward conditions, and there's a specific amount. And kind of like Damon said, in the sense that you don't always have to do it with exactly those stipulations, but that's usually a minimum. You usually would have to make a bigger payment than that and not a smaller than payment.
Always pay more than the minimum.
What's
What's that? Do I have a typo?
No, there's a set A alpha.
A set amount. Yeah, there's an M missing. It doesn't look real good, but it's in there now. Oh, but it's still wrong. It says amount now. Let's try again.
Set of money put out up front.
Instead of amount up front. Yeah, there we go.
People paying the minimum balance on credit cards.
We're going to talk about credit cards in a minute, so that's a little bit different than installment loans, but we're going to get there too. All right, so everybody's got in your mind kind of what this looks like, right? And so I'm not going to do the stereotypical example. We're not going to talk about a car loan. We're going to talk about Andy and Ann. So Ann and Andy's refrigerator dies. Unexpectedly, because that's the way it always works. It's always unexpected. Even if the thing is really, really old, it's always unexpected. I know it was when ours doing that. It's completely unexpected. I had no idea what was going to happen. They're in the midst of paying off debt and do not have cash to buy a new fridge. Against their better judgment, they decide to finance a new refrigerator. The store offers 6 months interest-free financing as long as Ann and Andy pay their fridge off in those 6 months. The store requires a $200 down payment on the $2,000 refrigerator. Okay, so one thing I did not include in this problem is because your book never uses it in there as well as, obviously in most cases there's a tax rate going on too, but we're going to ignore the tax rate for the moment, okay? So we're just talking about the purchase of the refrigerator itself. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got several different things going on that are of interest here. And this is often how the whole 90 days, same as cash, and those kinds of things work, is exactly how this is described. So bear with me so you can see the details of what's happening. First question, find the total amount to be financed. What is that asking you to do?
What they're gonna have to pay.
What they're going to have to pay.
The amount
Yeah,
that
the amount they have to pay to
is
have the fridge.
that they owe initially. So
Okay.
they pay the $200.
All right,
after
so
they pay the down payment.
Okay.
Which is are they in debt?
exactly. So this is the amount they're going to still owe on the refrigerator after they make their down payment. All right, so let's write in what we're actually doing here. What we're actually doing is we're taking, in this particular case, the $2,000 and subtracting off $200. Okay, so the amount that they're actually going to finance is $1,800. Everybody with me on that?
Yes.
Okay. Question 2. How much does the couple need to pay each month to avoid finance charges? So let's go back to the end of this question before. It says, the store offers 6 months interest-free financing as long as Ann and Andy pay the fridge off in those 6 months.
1,800 divided by 6.
So we do 1,800 divided by 6. So if Ann and Andy can successfully take 1,800 divided by 6, and at least on average, or in some way, shape, or form, if they pay $300 a month, then they're going to make out good on the deal, right? That's what this is saying. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if everybody did this, do you think that the store would continue to offer financing like this?
Yes.
No.
No way they would. They'd be losing money. There's no way that the store would continue to do this if everybody really paid it off in 6 months. So there's a catch, isn't there?
They're going to.
There's always a catch. So let's see what happens otherwise. If Ann and Andy do not pay off the fridge in the 6 months, and this is what happens with 90 days, same as cash kinds of things like this, stores backdate how much interest you owe them. So it doesn't happen like your student loans, right? On your student loans, you have things that are called deferments. You guys are aware of this. Hopefully somebody explained something to you when you took out all these loans. So you are on a deferred state. You don't have to pay any money while you're in school on your loans, right? And once you get done with school, I think you have about 6 months or so before they start accruing interest. Everybody with me so far? Okay? That's not the way consumer credit typically works. Typically, if you don't pay it off in this sort of a grace period they give you, yes, the interest starts accruing, but they actually backdate the interest throughout that entire 6 months that you didn't pay anything on it to. Okay, everybody with me? Yeah? So, the question asked next is, what is the amount to be repaid? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed question C. How much interest will be added on after 6 months if Ann and Andy fail to make any payments towards the loan?
1,800 plus. The backdated
1,800 plus the backdated interest. So how do I find the backdated interest?
interest. 12 times 6.
Close.
6 times 0.12.
Okay, so we're going to take 0.12 because that's the interest rate. In fact, before I do that, let me do this. Okay, where's my buttons going? Our question is asked how much interest. So we're going to take the interest formula. Let me write it in just so everybody's remembering this. This is the formula that you just used on your quiz. Do you remember this one? Simple interest formula, I equals PRT? I hope so. P is the principal. It's how much money they've actually had to finance. The interest rate, like Tyler was telling us, is the 12%. What is T?
6.
6 out of 12, it's 1/2. Be careful, time's still always done in years. So this is 0.5 or 1/2, or 6 out of 12, whatever you want to use. So take 1,800 times 0.12 times 0.5 in your calculator and tell me how much interest will they have added to their loan. $54. Do I have a second? Yep. Tyler says 50. Oh, 108. Try again. Did you multiply by the 0.5 at the end?
Oh, I didn't do
Multiply by
12. I did 6.
Oh, okay. So you actually simplified that and then you did that. That's okay. So we have 108.
Yes.
All right. So they no longer owe just $1,800. How much do they actually have to repay now?
1908.
Okay, so they have to repay the $1,800 they actually borrowed, plus this interest rate of 108, or interest payment of 108. So 1908. Okay? Now, I didn't read the very end of this, so let me go back and read the very end of this scenario above. It says, at which point Ann and Andy will be put on a payment plan to pay off the balance over the next 2 years. And if they're like most people, they're going to take the full 2 years to pay it off. That's what the company's counting on. Otherwise, they're not going to do this, okay? That's got to be what most people do, or the company does not make money. Are you with me? Okay, thinking Best Buy, thinking Home Depot. This is what these companies do, all right? So here's the way it works. It says, find the monthly payment over the next 2 years. This was simple interest, correct? We know that they have to pay $1908 total over the next however long, right? And that's the amount. Let me flip to my page where I'm going. Oh, I made a mistake up on Part D. So I was like, there's something wrong. This is the new principal. Right? My new principal that I have to pay off is $1908.
Yes.
But here's the kicker. That was only for 6 months of interest, correct?
Yes.
Are they really only going to have 6 months of interest?
No.
No, because now they're on a payment plan. And they're going to have how much longer of interest? 2 more years. So take a look at this. What's that? An additional 2 years, exactly. So we're actually wanting to find out their total amount that they have to repay, which is the $1908 that they have in essence borrowed at this point. And this is, I didn't write this in, but this is this formula that we used last section. And then we have our interest rate of 12%, which is just handy dandy for 2 years, right? All right, so 1908 times 1 plus 0.12 times 2. You can work your way inside out if you have a calculator that's going to cooperate with that, or you can put it all in there depending on the kind of calculator that you have.
Formula is that?
This one right up here.
Is that compounded interest formula?
No, it's simple interest, because it said at the beginning of the problem that they were doing this with simple interest.
2365.92 is what I got.
Okay, say again for me, Tyler.
2365.92.
That sounds familiar. That's what I have as well. So over the course of the 2 years, because the way this simple interest is working, they're going to end up paying $2365.92. Okay, Part E actually asked us, what is the monthly payment that they have to make over the next 2 years? So what would we do for that? Divide by 24, because it's 24 months, right? So 2365, 92 over, what was it, 24? Okay. Tyler, you're full of all the calculator stuff for me today. What's the next one? 9858. It's all good? Okay. Now here's the interesting question. Find the total cost for the refrigerator plus interest.
So 2,000 plus.
Probably an easier way to do it than to go clear back to the 2000. So let's think what's happened. The first thing was they went into the store and they paid $200, right? So we know they paid $200. Under this scenario, if they failed to make the payments they were supposed to make in that 6 months and they ended up being put on the payment plan, which is the typical thing that happens, we found out back on Part D that the total amount that they would then have to pay was $2365, right? Okay, so that's the additional amount, $2365.92, for a grand whopping total of what?
2565.92.
Okay, so, oh, I think I left out a number. I did. There we go.
That's when you go on Craigslist and look up refrigerators.
All right, so
That can be
here's what I want you to see
thoroughly
from this.
clean them.
Damon, settle down for me. Here's what I want you to see about this, okay? Their $2,000 refrigerator actually cost them what? $2,500, a little more, okay, depending on your term of little, right? A little more. This is not something that you need to write down per se, at least not to know how you're figuring it, but I want you to know that this is a 28%, or sorry, this is
Finance.
28% more than the price tag. So that 12% interest actually cost them over the span of that 2.5 years, 28% interest.
She was a good saleswoman that sold it.
Very, very hefty. All right, now credit cards are done a little bit differently. So this is an installment loan kind of a process. A revolving loan or an open-ended credit, so you should be thinking credit cards here, okay? There's other things like home equity loans and things like that too that fall into this, but think credit card. There's no fixed number of payments. You can just continue to make payments until no further amount is owed. Or you die, because that's what often happens too. People just keep making the payments till they die. And an itemized billing is the statement that comes at the end of typically each month. Lists purchases, cash advances, balance owed, minimum payments required, etc. for whatever the loan is. Again, think credit cards.
It's good to have a starting line of credit younger. The richest people on this planet
These are debatable things. Let's not get into this, please, Damon.
only spend about 20%.
Damon. Seriously. Let's not get into it, okay?
Okay. We can talk after class.
That would be fine. Okay, so itemized billing. I mean, you get itemized billing for lots of things besides credit cards, right? You get it for your electric bills, and you get them for cable and things like that, too. We're actually talking about it specifically in terms of what you owe to a line of credit, though. Okay, some kind of a credit.
Is there ever interest on revolving loans?
Typically, yes. Sometimes you'll see where people will offer, 0% introductory rates on credit cards, things like that, and there might not be interest for specifically the time. But eventually, they're going to charge you something. If they don't, then you're not a very good customer because they're not making any money on you.
Yeah.
So yes, typically speaking, there's interest, and you would see interest also on this. If there's an interest, that's where you see the total balance owed as well.
Okay.
Interest is typically included on an itemized billing.
Okay.
All right, can I flip the slide? I think everybody's finished. Finance charges, this is what you're asking about, Tyler. They actually may include more than just interest, though. So they could include interest, annual fees. Some credit cards have those, some don't. Credit insurance coverage, in case you don't pay your bills. A time payment differential or carrying charges. And many times anyway, they're done on an average daily balance method. And we're going to do the average daily balance method so you can see what it is, but it's what's called a weighted mean of various amounts of credit for different parts of your billing period. So in other words, if you owe a whole bunch of money for most of the time and then you pay it off, you still have to make some kind of an interest payment on that portion of it. So it takes into account how long it is you've owed that money. Yes, Damon?
A good way to build credit also is to not put all cash down. finance, then pay it off.
Thank you. I'm actually of the mindset that building credit's not a good plan anyway, so
Building credit.
it's not a good plan. So, has anybody heard of Dave Ramsey?
You wanna
That's all I'm going to say about it. So,
so
if you haven't heard of Dave Ramsey, you're welcome to talk with me about him later too. Trying not to get in too far into what I believe about credit here, but it will bleed over occasionally. But I do want you to see how the process works. Because if you don't know what you're doing, then you're going to get taken advantage of, whether you believe whatever. You need to know how the process is working and whether it is to your advantage or not. So, jot these down. And I'm going to show you, in essence, what we're going to do. We've got about 5 minutes. We might be able to get started on the problem, but probably not finish it.
really.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and flip to the next slide. For the following credit card amount, assume 1 month between biking dates. That should say billing dates. I bet it's right on your paper. Billing dates. With the appropriate number of days, depending on which month you're talking about. Interest of 1.3% per month on the average daily balance. If you multiply 1.3% times 12, you'll find the average or the annual rate. But that would be a monthly rate, 1.3%. Find A, the average daily balance, B, the monthly finance charge, and C, the account balance for the next month. Okay, so if you're into charts and graphs and spreadsheets and stuff, you're going to kind of like this. I kind of am. I'm kind of a nerd. I know you had no idea it's a surprise, but that's the way it goes. All right, so we've got a previous billing.
We don't have.
It's, I think you guys have the same numbers. You should.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
sorry.
$727.36 is owed, so you get the credit card statement in the mail. It comes on May 9th, that's when your final date is. And on May 17th, you send in a payment of $200. Go out to dinner on May 30th, $46.11. And then you go to the theater for June 3rd on $64.50. Okay, so everybody understand this would be a very small number of transactions, but I want you to see how it works without getting crazy into how detailed it can be. There's two things we need to do. The first issue that the first column we're going to create is the running balance. Okay? So here is my running balance column.
You have 728.36.
Here's a 728.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll fix it. Now I have it too. All right, running balance. So, you start out the month, you owe $728.36, okay? First thing you do is you make a payment of $200. So how much do you owe now? Right, $528.36, okay? Then you go out to dinner and you charge it because you ran out of cash because you didn't plan very well. $46.11, so $528.36, and you have to add $46.11 to that. What's that give you?
574.47.
Okay. And then apparently some group came to town and you just couldn't bear the thought of not going and seeing them, so you went to the theater and you spent $64.50. I hope that's 2 tickets. What, 6 what?
638.97.
All right. Okay, so this is our first column, it's just the running balance. And we need a second column, and the second column is going to be the number of days that we were at that balance. Okay, So the first one, the May 9th billing date. So from May 9th to May 17th, it's at the same balance that whole time. Are you with me? How many days is that? 8 days. So for 8 days, we owe $728. From May 17th to May 30th, we owe that same $528.36. How many days is that? 13 days. From May 30th, I keep wanting to go backwards. From May 30th down to June 3rd, we owe $574.47. How many days is that?
30 days past September, April, June, and November.
So how many days does May have? 31. So May 31st, June 1st, June 2nd, June 3rd, so we've got 4 days, right? All right. So you get to the end of the month, you can't just subtract, right? June 3rd. Now, what am I going to put in here next? I mean, what happens after this? What happens after June 3rd with this credit card, this billing cycle? What's going to happen next?
It's gonna get that.
It's not present debt.
It's going to go to June 9th. Why, Jonathan?
Because you get billed every month.
It billed every month. And it actually said that a little bit. The language wasn't so perfect, but that's the language your book used, so I wanted to follow through with it. It said assume 1 month between billing dates with the appropriate number of days. So every month on this particular card, it's on the 9th. So on June 9th is when we're going to get charged or get sent our new bill in the mail. So from June 3rd to June 9th is 6 days. Okay? We will stop here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of multiplication, a little bit of division, and we're going to finish it on that.